I'm Alex Miceli, and this is 451 Degrees. This is a podcast on the Unsafe Space Network. We are talking about censorship. So I went to grad school for creative writing English. I got my degree in a Kansas college before most of the woke hit that area, and I even taught. But I left academia because it is not a very viable, job market right now, and hasn't for a while. But I also continued to write novels and poems and plays. But lately, I have been doing YouTube videos, mostly Let's Plays, and some podcasts with my friend Caleb Beers on his channel. And this is my co-host today. This is Joe Garza. How about you tell the audience about yourself, Joe?
Yeah, sure. So thanks for having me on. Really excited for this conversation. So for those of you who don't know me, and there's probably a lot of you who don't know me, I am the founder of the Reckless Muse publication, which is on Medium. And it's I started with the intent of kind of of really highlighting sort of countercultural, taking a more heterodox stance against, a lot of this woke stuff, a lot of cancel culture, and just a lot of the threats that I'm seeing that artists and creators are facing today. And so I started this just about a year and a half ago, I believe. And even though it's still pretty small, it's been growing at a pretty decent rate since then. And then just a couple months ago, I started a companion podcast with my friend Ben DeLesio called the Reckless Musecast. As of this recording, we've done 3 episodes, and same thing there. Like, it's just it's irreverent, it's fun. We criticize a lot of this really ridiculous outrage stuff, but at the same time, it's also very pro art. It's pro artists. We care about freedom of speech and freedom of expression, and just making sure that artists have the, just encouraging artists to go out and take risks and try new things and experiment. And if they fail, that's okay. Let's give them second chance, because right now, saying the wrong thing can, even if you said something bad a few years ago, that's liable enough to come back and ruin your career for years to come.
Definitely. There's no redemption in it. There's no sense of forgiveness,
right,
or growth at all in the current culture, especially when it comes to art. And one of the reasons why I wanted to start this podcast on censorship specifically is because I've noticed a confusion with a lot of people about what is censorship in the first place.
Right.
For example, I've heard the argument that it's not censorship unless the government does it. It's like, no, it's not a violation of your First Amendment rights unless the government does it. Right. Censorship comes in many, many forms, as we've seen. We have several types. There's the government one, which is the violation of First Amendment, but it includes something like hate speech laws, and calls for private industries to silence specific ideas or people, which we have seen recently in other countries and in our own country here in the U.S. And then we have this weird thing that happens with intergovernment censorship, where another nation's laws end up censoring our art. Yep. I mentioned it happens in video gaming before. I've talked about that, how something like Rainbow Six Siege had to remove scroll images because they were putting all the servers on the same network, so that players in China would also be on the American network, and that meant they had to remove certain things, or the Chinese government would get mad. And we've seen that with Disney and stuff. Have you seen that before? Do you have an example I just didn't come up with?
Yeah, I mean, there are quite a few. I think that the YA or the young adult writing community is pretty censorious. And same thing there, where it's like, even though it might not be censorship in the legal sense or the political sense, there are just so many calls for authors to rewrite something that is considered problematic to a small group of people, or in some cases even to retract their work.
I often call that corporate or industry censorship, where the people at the higher ups go, we don't think that this is the right culture for this particular piece, so we would like you to change it. we see that happening. And then, and I feel like a lot of that, they also do this thing where they copyright claim people for fair use things when people talk about stuff. So like, for example, if someone talks about a movie in a review on a platform, they may get a copyright claim just for talking about it, just as a damage control method, which is a form of censorship that is a little less clear, I think, but also still censorship, because if you silence critics, you're still silencing a voice involved. And then I think sometimes those calls come from journalists or reviewers or influencers on social media. You have to change this, or you have to fire someone. That happens too. And like, I've noticed that those specific three are able to wield social media against the people they want to silence. So they'll do this thing where they'll whip up a mob, which a mob is a different form of censorship. I've seen that recently, and that often sometimes leads to social media banning, and which I've experienced personally in the last 2 weeks. To anyone who doesn't know, you cannot follow me on Twitter anymore because I got kicked off Twitter 2 weeks ago, and I'm not getting back on.
Oh, geez. Yeah, no, it's wild, because it's people who set out to cancel others, they keep hiding behind like, well, the government didn't come after you, we didn't violate your First Amendment rights. It's like, yeah, but like, even though it's still producing the same result, like it's still producing the same end result. Like, somebody who set out, they're well within their rights to set out and say something or share an opinion or a piece of art or something, but now it's their ability to share with others has been drastically reduced, or even in other cases, straight up restricted. And so it's kind of a weird thing, and it's funny. It's like, people who might not be woke, but they're sort of apologetic. They're sort of like, well, that's, one person got canceled, that's not a big deal. But at the same time, it's like, well, how many people does this need to happen to before you start saying, whoa, a lot of people are getting kicked off of this platform. A lot of people are being forced to apologize or retract their work or their words because they stepped over the line a little bit. It's weird. There are times it can be frustrating where it's like, I'm not a conspiracy theorist. Like, all of this happened with just in the last couple of years, and these incidents are completely separate from each other. This isn't some grand conspiracy. This is just pockets of sort of cultural hall monitors who kind of going around and saying, this is offensive, that's offensive, you can't say this. And the thing that cracks me up too, is that so often it's coming from people who are not members of the group who are supposedly being criticized or made fun of in some way. Yeah, exactly, allies. I'll just use me for example. I'm Mexican. So, every so often a comedian will get in hot water for making a joke about Mexicans. And it's almost always very progressive white people who are saying, that's offensive to Mexicans. But most Mexicans I know are like, I thought it was funny, or I didn't really care one way or the other.
Well, it's sort of like American Dirt. I heard a bunch of local writers. I'm in Arizona, so there's a lot of Hispanic writers here, especially Mexican. And they were like, I don't care. Like, I don't see what the big deal is. She published a book. And they don't see why this is such a problem. And the first time I noticed that being outraged on someone else's behalf was years ago, back in like 2010, I think. I was reading an article about a orchestra conductor he was white and from Britain, I believe. And his best friend was a opera singer, black man from the South, and they teased each other about what they ate. So like the black guy would talk about how he would eat like tea and crumpets or whatever, and he would tease them about collard greens and whatever, and grits. And someone overheard the British guy making these comments, and it was a like middle-aged white woman, and she complained to the orchestra foundation, and he got fired. And his friend was like, I didn't even get asked. No one asked me if I was offended, and obviously I wasn't, because we're friends. And it's kind of horrible, because it's kind of ruining any kind of friendship people could have, because they have to be afraid of what they say, even to each other, if they're like at a cafe or at their work, someone might overhear them and get mad on their behalf, and it's not worth it. And that brings us to the final form of censorship, which is self-censorship.
Right.
And it's bad enough when you're doing it in conversation, but it's way, way worse when you're doing it in your art or your scientific research, which is where we're seeing it, where we're talking about it a lot, where it's, essentially destroying art and science.
Yeah, absolutely. And especially with COVID being such a, a major issue right now, where it's like we can't even discuss, other forms of treatment, and
we even have to be careful right here.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. Well, I won't get too caught up in the COVID side, but speaking from the creative artist side, the self-censorship thing is especially dangerous. There is an author who I often interact with on Twitter. I'll keep him nameless for now. He probably wouldn't mind if I mentioned it, but I'll keep him nameless for now. But he's been criticizing a lot of this woke stuff for a while, and he also teaches at a college level. He teaches writing, I believe, and he told me that some of his students are coming up to him saying, I want to publish this story, or I want to submit this story to a publication or a magazine, but I'm afraid that, because, it doesn't quite toe the line, or maybe because the main character is a person of color and I'm white, I don't feel, I might have to change the ethnicity of the character. That's especially scary to me when it's, 19, 20-year-olds. And it's like, no, you're young and crazy. Like, go just create, like, just go do it. And I especially want, young artists to be like that. I can just understand if you're kind of old and whatever, like maybe you kind of like, I'll soften, fine, I'll go ahead and censor this a little bit, or I'll whatever. It's like, no, you're young and stupid. Go out and do something crazy.
Well, you should be pushing your boundaries. You should be pushing the edge in art, like trying to find it, especially when you are discovering yourself as an artist. You should be figuring out exactly what topics you really want to delve into and push. And if you're not uncomfortable as the writer, you're probably not going to make your readers uncomfortable. And because it's the same thing of the no tears for the writer, no tears for the reader. So to me, it feels like stifling them is stifling the reader as well. We're stifling everything. And I do feel like literature, contemporary lit, is especially clamped down under this now, more than probably a lot of other forms of art. Like, it seems like comic books, there's all these indie comic book writers right now that are doing much better, and with the internet and everything. The problem is, what I see is that when it comes to contemporary lit, is that there's no access to, the bestseller list, because those aren't really about bestsellers. There's no access to that whole big background of marketing that the publishing houses have. And over the last 30 years, several smaller publishing houses closed down entirely or merged with the bigger ones. So it's a lot harder to get support as a contemporary lit writer, unfortunately. And I can see that for the younger audiences, like young adult and middle grade, that those are usually really controlled by the industry, because people are very concerned about what their children may be consuming. The problem with that is that they trust the publishing houses to do that for them, to police that content for them, and they really can't anymore. And that's really sad, because I feel like children have the best imaginations. So it's really the best time to introduce them to all kinds of topics and forms of art and pushing the boundaries. It used to be, they said that if you can't get an adult to read it, then get a kid to read it, because they'll accept it more willingly. But now it's harder to break into that market.
Oh yeah, no, absolutely. And I think the first time that I really saw just how ridiculous the YA writing community was with Kosoko Jackson. And he wrote, it was his debut novel. So here, I'll back up real quick. Kosoko Jackson was, I believe, a sensitivity reader or editor. which I think that's really stupid role. But anyway, he's black and gay, and he was part of I don't know if like maybe it's a community, like an online community, and they use the hashtag own voices. And that So which for those who don't know what that is, it's when you as the author are writing a story where the main character shares some kind of identity with you. So if you're female, then your main character is going to be female. If you're gay, then your main character is going to be. So he's black and gay, and the main characters of the stories were two young gay men, and it just got eviscerated. But it got eviscerated by a handful of people on Goodreads. It wasn't even like it got released and then it just people were offended by its content, and they were offended because the story took place during the Kosovo War, and I guess there were some historically inaccurate things, and I think there were some less than pleasant portrayals of Muslims in the story. But there was such a huge backlash from the YA community towards Kosoko Jackson, and it's crazy. Like no matter how high up on the intersectional ladder you are, if you say one thing wrong, they will come after you. But he basically was pressured into retracting his book. And then the thing that scared me the most wasn't just the fact that he did it. It was the fact that he was applauded for it. He got a lot of praise because he said, I'm not going to publish this book because it hurts some feelings. That scares the hell out of me, where we're actually giving praise to artists for saying, I'm not going to share this work. That's the exact opposite of what artists are for.
Yes.
And it sets such a bad precedent. I don't think that the people involved with that realize just how bad of a precedent they're setting by saying, yeah, it's okay if you think that what you did was offensive. It's okay to not share it with the world.
It's not going to help us advance as a culture, as a species, right, to stifle art. And the fact that we're okay with it right now, like you and I, we're not okay with it. Right. I'm a free speech absolutist. Yep. So, which is why I get banned from Twitter. But the fact of the matter is that like so many people, and that's the thing though, is that we need to be realistic here, is that so many vocal people, incredibly vocal or powerful people are pushing this, not necessarily on a grand scale number of people, right, you know, in the long run, population wise, are actually pushing for this. Right. Most people are too busy to think about this kind of stuff. They don't realize that it's even going on half the time. Like if you don't have your finger on the pulse of whatever artistic industry you care about, you are missing out on all these cultural problems where people are being censored. And I try to keep my finger on the pulse of all of them, which makes it a little difficult. Yeah. But it's even gotten to the point where you can't, it's not just your art, but how you present yourself as well. Because right, your art could be completely unoffensive, but if you are not towing the line in how you present yourself in a PR way, right, it's still bad enough, and people will go, I'm never reading your work again, or buy your book and burn it, essentially. Yeah. Yeah. And we've seen that a lot of people have said there's been no book burnings, and it's like, then you haven't been paying attention, because I've seen several. Yeah.
Not too long ago, there was students at Georgetown University went to the school library and were pulled out a few hundred books that they considered to be problematic, and they didn't even read the contents of the books. They looked at the covers and they said, oh, it's portraying blacks as savages. Well, the book was written in 1872 or something. It's like, oh, the portrayal of women in this makes them seem docile or something. Like they didn't read the books at all. They looked at the covers and they said, this is problematic, and they threw them out. And that's frightening to me, because the Nazi book burnings, and I don't like making Nazi comparisons. You know, it's so overwrought. But the Nazi book burnings were carried out by college students. Of course it had support from the state, but it was carried out by college students. So when you have young people saying this is offensive to me, again, it's one thing if you're a conservative old person and you're saying this is obscene, I could at least understand that. But it's like if you're 22 and you're saying, this picture, this book has a picture of a woman and it's provocative and it's sexist. I don't want anybody else to read this book. You have better things and more fun things to worry about as a 20-something-year-old.
20-something-year-olds though love crusades. That's the thing. You feel ready to take on the world.
True.
And you want to. So if someone gives you a crusade, you'll take it up, and especially if everyone around you is taking it up. That's the sad part. Is that it's very easy to play on that desire to fix the world. When you're in your 20s, you're an idealist almost every step of the way.
Oh yeah, that's true.
Unfortunately, and it's very easily manipulated. That period of your life, you have to be very careful when you're that age. And which is why most of us in our 30s and stuff, we look back on that time and we go, what was I thinking? We've all done stupid shit in our 20s. No, I'm not saying that I haven't. And that's part of the problem, is that 10 years down the line, we're seeing people who, said something that people find offensive right now. But that's the problem. In 10 years, what did you say that people are going to find offensive? And there's no sense of, what comes next, of the long term in this whole cultural anti-speech environment. There is no sense of what if they come for me next. And it's like, they will. That's guaranteed they will. So because you're not going to keep up with it. You're not going to keep up with the new language. That's not happening. And the new ideas, and they're going to come for you. So you might as well give up on it right now. Yeah. And that's why I say no apologies, no retractions, no apologies.
No. Yeah, absolutely. And there's such a huge irony in that the people today who set out to cancel others, they keep saying that they're on the right side of history, but all you have to do is read a history book and you'll see that the people who went out and censored and silenced and deplatformed others, they are constantly on the wrong side of history. Nobody looks back to Tipper Gore and the Parents Music Resource Center of the 80s and says, oh, I'm glad that they went after rock and roll music. Oh, I'm so glad that we had McCarthyism going after Hollywood people because they were supposedly communists. Oh, I'm so glad that Nazis burned all those books. Nobody looks back fondly on those and says, I'm glad that happened. I'm glad that they silenced those ideas. Even if I thought those ideas were crazy or offensive, I'm like, nobody looks back and says that. And so it's like this weird sort of temporal myopia. Like nobody who's part of the sort of cancel culture is willing to look past the recent past or into like the near future and say, well, this might get out of hand. Or a few decades ago, like we criticized a lot of these people. We thought that the people who were going around silencing others were uptight prudes. Maybe we're doing the same thing. Nobody's doing that.
Well, I think I've said this earlier in the year that a lot of these people have an ends justify the means attitude. So it's okay for them to do it because of their ends. But the problem is with that, everybody thinks that way who does, on the opposite side, they think that way too. Like Tipper Gore. She thought that was reasonable. Right. Everyone who has a crusade thinks they're on the right side of history. Yeah. So that's the problem with crusades is that they're blinding. They teach you myopia. They prevent you from seeing what other people see when they see your actions. What you're doing is wrong no matter how you slice it. It doesn't matter who's doing the action. If it's censorship, it's wrong. Right. And that's a big problem. A lot of people think that, it's not a big deal if the private industry does it. And it's like, it is still a big deal. It is an incredibly big deal. Yeah. And especially as we go more and more digital, the more and more we're online, the more and more our content is not physical, the more important it is that we don't allow private industry to censor. And a lot of people don't realize that at some point they're going to come for you and your speech. Whoever's in charge, you don't know who's going to be in charge in 15 years and 20 years. Don't let them set this precedent.
Yeah. No, that's the thing. I mean, the pendulum always swings. Like we've seen censorship coming from the religious right, and now we're seeing it from the zealous left. I wouldn't be surprised if 10, 15 years, the right gains more institutional power and starts going after ideas it considers to be bad. And it's going to keep going back and forth. And I think the thing that's so frustrating about this is that, like, all we have to do, like I said, is read one history book, any country really, any era, and we can be like, yeah, the people who were in charge, who thought that they had cracked the code of morality, and that and that they had sole copyright on what's a good idea and what's a bad idea. They always end up being the bad guys. It's like we have so much access to that knowledge, and yet nobody's willing. It seems like very few people are willing to just crack open a book, or even just read a Wikipedia article. Don't read a book. Just read a Wikipedia article.
And Wikipedia is incredibly censored, but even that is a better source for knowing the history. Like if you look at far history, like for example, if you look at what happened with Jonathan Swift, he published almost everything he wrote under pseudonyms because they didn't have free speech laws in England during his life. Right. And he knew that if he published them under his name, he would get arrested and tortured for sedition. Right. And like everyone knows A Modest Proposal, and it really blew up. But he was already a hero to the Irish people before A Modest Proposal. Modern readers know A Modest Proposal, but at the time, everyone knew about his pamphlet about don't take the new coin in Ireland. So he was already a hero. That's the problem, though, is that everybody knew he wrote these, but it couldn't be proven in a court of law. And one of his publishers was even taken by the state and tortured to give up his name. Yeah, and his publisher never did, luckily. But so that's the thing. You can see what lengths are they willing to go to find out who's the problem. Right. In Russia, during the USSR, there was a painting called The Black Square that they hated because it wasn't commissioned by the government, by the state. And that was a problem because it means that something exists outside the state. And this is such a big thing. You can see it in history forever, all over the world. You can see it in Chinese history. You can see it in Japanese history. It doesn't freaking matter. You can check anywhere. You will see that censorship has negative impacts.
Right. Yeah, no, absolutely. I see very few people, very few prominent figures in this discussion talking about the ramifications of their actions. It's one of those things where it's like, maybe it'll solve a minor problem now. Sure, maybe that book or that joke or that movie or that song perpetuated a negative stereotype or crossed the boundaries or something, and maybe it'll make a few people feel comfortable now. But when everybody else starts doing it, like that's the thing. And I don't mean to get too off topic here, but when I see people having political discussions, I see very few people willing to put limiting principles on their own ideas. It's either like 100% this or 100% that. Nobody's willing to say, I'm in favor of this idea, but I think it can go too far. It's like if you're at least willing to allow some wiggle room, then we can have a reasonable conversation. But when it comes to a lot of this cancel culture stuff and censoring and deplatforming and whatever you want to call it, I don't really see anybody saying, I think that this person deserves to be kicked off the platform, but that's it. After that, that's or when you cross this line, that's when it gets bad. Again, I still disagree with that, but at least it's like, okay, at least put in the effort to have some kind of foresight about where your ideas can go. But I'm not saying it. It's all about the present. It's all about I want to be made to feel comfortable right now.
There's some idea that scientifically our brains can't see much further into the future than like a few days. And depending, you see it in businesses make decisions for the now that totally screw their future all the time. Right. And you see it with consumer behavior a lot. So the idea that it happens in politics, unsurprising to me. Yeah. I think a lot of it is like an impulse control problem. Like you're not planning for your future, essentially.
Right.
You have no idea how to do that. Maybe no one ever taught you how, and that's kind of sad, and maybe you should work on it. Like, I don't necessarily think that makes you a bad person, that you were not given those tools, because it's not a tool most people are given in the first place. But the problem is that when you start pushing policy that affects all these other people's lives based on your lack of foresight, now we have a problem.
Right. Yeah, exactly. And there's something incredibly selfish about all of these calls for deplatforming or whatever. Just because you found this comedian to be offensive doesn't mean that everybody else has to share your moral sensibilities. It's so one of the things that I've been kind of trying to refine over the last couple of years as I've kind of gotten into this culture war and everything, is that I find myself caring less and less about what offends people, because I think everyone has certain offenses. I think offense can be sort of like fear. Like, we can have irrational fears, just like we can have irrational offenses. So it's like, oh, that's fine. This thing bothers you, that's fine. But you can just change the channel. You can just not buy that book. You can be like, yeah, that comedian's not for me. I'm not going to see them perform live. Okay, that's fine. Like, I'm not going to criticize you. So I find myself, not criticizing people because they're offended by something that doesn't offend me, because I'm sure there are plenty of things that offend me that other people will think are pretty trivial. But what I try to focus on is what people do with that offense. Is changing the channel, not buying the book, not supporting that comedian. Sure, don't buy the ticket. Okay, that's fine. But now you're preventing other people from having a good time. You're preventing other people from, and that's the thing about art too, is that art can be such a moving experience, and you're removing that opportunity for a lot of people simply because it didn't affect you in the way that the artist intended. So it's funny. This is coming from the group that claims to be on the side of compassion and benevolence. Like, no, this is incredibly selfish.
It is incredibly selfish, because it's not only is the audience losing out on an experience that they could love, but it's also making artists lose out on income and a support.
Right.
And this is the thing too, is that we've seen enough artists kill themselves throughout history because of those issues, that it's kind of important that we not do that. The author of A Confederate of Dunces, he killed himself because he never got his book published in his lifetime. And that's kind of serious. Someone died. I know it's really hard to conceptualize that when you don't know this person, when you never met them, when you never saw them. But it is a human being, just because it's not directly in front of you. And that's a big problem right now with the digital world, is conceptualizing the fact that these are human beings you're talking about, with hopes and desires and loves and things they want in their life and turmoil that they may experience. It's so hard to conceptualize that. Instead, it's so easy for someone to come along and tell you, if you do this one thing, these people, these nebulous people, this nebulous group of people you've never met is going to be happy. And that all you have to do is sell out that one person. You don't know that person though, so it doesn't matter. That's what's going on.
Well, that's another big irony too, because if a feminist gets piled on Twitter, then all these articles rush to her defense, saying, "Oh, look, she's experienced all this harassment," and I'm still willing to be like, "Okay, fine, she said something ridiculous. She shouldn't. People are saying some horrible, nasty things to her. Yeah, that's fucked up." But if a comedian says something offensive on Twitter and they get piled on, nobody, very few mainstream publications will take the side of the comedian. It's always like, "Whoa, it's just criticism. It's just backlash." But when it's the feminist, then it's abuse. Then it's harassment.
It's so weird when they decide what is criticism and what is abuse. It's like telling someone you wish they were raped, you wish that they would die, that someone would, whatever horrible, violent thing, that's abusive. That's an abusive thing to say to people. But telling people, I think you're being illogical because of this fallacy and that fallacy, and you're ignoring this data, that's criticism. Or or this one, I'm sorry, I just don't agree with you. just stated plainly like that, is not abuse.
Yeah.
It's like, I'm sorry when, I didn't agree with you. Okay. Then, and this is the thing too, is that if my opinion on experiencing abuse on the internet is to block the person. I don't even feel the need to kick them off. I'm just like, I just don't want to hear from them anymore. That's it. If you don't like me, block me. I don't care. But don't kick me off the platform.
Right. No, that's the thing is that members of this sort of outrage culture, they don't realize the amount of autonomy they have over their own emotional comfort. Like, I don't even care if you prioritize your own emotional comfort. Like, that's fine. Only follow people who agree with you. Fine. But it's like nothing is stopping you from just clicking block or mute or unsubscribe.
Instead of forming a mob and to kick someone off or shut them up.
Start a petition or whatever. It's like, it's the most ridiculous. It takes so much more emotional effort, I think, to like start a petition and rally the troops to go after somebody than it is to be like, this person's comment ruined my day. I'm gonna block them. I'm gonna go watch funny cat videos. Okay, yeah, that's fine. Go do what you want. That's like, I don't care. But
and then I think a lot of people don't have a lot of understanding that of all the things in the world, the one thing that you have control over is yourself. Like, guaranteed. If you're not, and if you're willing to give up that control of the only control that you really truly have, I question why. What are you giving it up for? Probably nothing good. Honestly, it's not going to be worth it. That's the problem with these censorship campaigns that are pushing for like an industry to standardize a form of censorship. We don't want this idea out there anymore. Essentially, what you're saying is, I don't want that control. I don't want that control over whether or not I see it. Instead, I would like to pretend as if these people don't exist. And I would like to bar other people from seeing them. Because then they won't talk to me about that person either. And that's really unsavory. And immature.
And I don't think that they realize just how badly that weapon can be can be used against them as well. So maybe a comedian gets silenced because they said something that was critical of feminism. It's like, well, so you made up an excuse to get this person deplatformed or whatever. But now I can just make him an excuse to be like, well, that feminist author, she hates men. I want her kicked off of Twitter. So you could start a big petition. So I was like, they have no idea just how much of a powerful weapon. And this is a weapon that like anybody can pick up and use. It's not like they have sole ownership of it.
Well, and you could just lie. That's the problem with it, is that it's a weapon that has no due process. So you can make up anything you wanted to say. For example, if you haven't read J.K. Rowling's essay, essentially, that has gotten her in so much trouble, the things they say she said and the things she actually said are worlds apart. And essentially they're banking on the outraged people to never read what she wrote, or to never read it with an open mind to actually hear what she said. And that's what we see a lot of. It's they just make crap up about people. Like these buzzwords essentially that are cancellation triggers. And it's really distasteful, and it's the fact that it totally lacks any kind of due process, any kind of justice to it, even though they claim it's social justice. It's disheartening and it's frightening, and it really needs to stop. It's like, wake up, this will happen to you.
I think the first big example of that I saw when I really started paying attention to what's going culturally was with James Damore and the Google memo. Same thing there. I read that memo as like the morning that news broke that he got fired from Google. Before I even read any articles, I was like, okay, I'm going to read what that memo is. I'm going to read it first, and then I'll start reading the news and people commenting on it. And I read it. I was like, okay, yeah, all right, makes sense. So why are people offended by this? And then And then I went back and it's like, he didn't say that. That's not what he meant by that. You took that out of context. That's not what the point of it was. Yeah, it's insane. It's people divorced from reality. And they're just kind of making up their own.
You know what's crazy is this predates the internet. A lot of people think that this is a problem of the internet, but it isn't actually. Yeah. Because if you read something like Steven Pinker's The Blank Slate, he talks about assaults on research papers that people wrote, where people had a campaign among the academia to, retract this paper, this book, because it said things they didn't like, and they lied about what it said.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so this is not new. This is not a new thing that's happening. The problem is that the internet makes it faster.
Yeah. Yes.
It has way more traction with the speed of communication we are dealing with now, as opposed to before. It was somewhat harder because a petition meant a paper and you get people to sign it. And now it's a digital thing and you could get thousands of people to sign it within an hour.
Right. Right. And this reminds me a little bit of the Tipper Gore thing, when the singer from Twisted Sister, he went to go testify to Congress, and she called out a Twisted Sister song called "Under the Blade," and she accused the song of being about sadomasochism. And he goes, "No, it's actually not. It's about my friend undergoing throat surgery." Like. And I definitely recommend people checking it out. The whole thing's up on YouTube. But Dee Snider, the singer, he said Tipper Gore, she had S&M on her mind, and so when she listened to that song, she found it. And so Al Gore was there too. So it's like he's making fun of her, of his wife in front of her. But that's the other thing too. Is like. When we constantly look at art and works of pop culture through our own moral lens, like it becomes much easier to find things that offend us and much easier to justify why this thing should be banned. Instead of stepping back and be like, oh, I wonder what the song is really about. I wonder what this novel is really about. Instead, it's like, no, it offends me, therefore it must be bad. It must be obscene, therefore it's worth getting rid of.
Yeah, there was a poet from, I want to say the early 20th century, who wrote about abortions. And she wrote them so well, though, that people couldn't tell whether or not she was pro-choice or, pro-life. They could not tell. They thought some readers brought to it that, oh, she has had abortions, and it reminded me of my abortion. And then some readers were like, I love that she thinks that this is terrible. And I'm like, that's really good writing.
Yeah.
Like, that's damn good writing. But the problem is that you're not going to get most readers, especially if they've gone to college and been taught the lenses, to not come at it with the lens.
Right.
That's the problem right now, is that because our education is so industrialized in this country, incredibly so. I don't agree with it. Having been a former educator myself, I don't think it's working. Yeah. So right. I think our results are speaking for themselves as not being necessarily good. And the problem is, though, is that we're teaching every student exactly how to look at every piece of work, every single one, including music, paintings, drawings, written words, anything. Like, whatever the professor says or teacher says to the student, that's what the student's supposed to think. And the thing is, though, is that this is what I notice, is that those professors and teachers pick that up from their professors and teachers. Yeah. So it's like, where is the original thought? Is it going back 60 years at this point?
Yeah. That's especially frustrating. I mean, we're seeing this with more and more schools are getting rid of To Kill a Mockingbird from the curriculum. And it's like, that book is obviously like genuinely anti-racist, not the stupid pop anti-racist that we're seeing nowadays, but it's genuinely against racism. But simply because it addresses racism, simply because it uses the N-word, or because Harper Lee was not black, it's like we're finding all these ridiculous reasons to cancel a book that actually has a lot of really useful and beneficial life lessons in it. But that's the thing. It seems there's not as much of an incentive to teach students like, okay, what are the qualities and but what are maybe some of the negative elements of it? Like, let's look at both sides of it. But no, it's like it's still triggering, so we can't have it near the students.
I know Postcolonial Theory, which is one of the critical theories, it was for literature first. That's where it hit first. And one of the big proponents of it, he wrote about Heart of Darkness by Joseph Conrad. And he said, and he was like, it's so racist. It's so racist. I didn't know about his writings when I read Heart of Darkness, which I don't like that book, but for different reasons.
Right.
I just
boring as hell.
Yes, it's essentially. But there's a scene in it called that a lot of people in academia refer to as the Grove of Suffering or the Grove of Despair. It's where the main character first comes to Africa and he's walking through to the building, after getting off the boat, and he sees all these local Black people, the local Africans, dying. They're overworked, they're starved, they're dehydrated, they're like just laying there under trees with sparse shade. It's horrible.
Yeah.
And I was like, he's very clearly trying to say that this is awful.
Yeah.
Like there's no question about it.
Right.
He's saying that this disposal and use of the local Africans is horrifying.
Yeah.
So to say that Heart of Darkness is racist, where are you getting that from?
Yeah.
And this is a problem though with satire or any kind of older political writing, is that people do this thing where they present an idea, something that's happening, and they're like, look at how horrible it is. It's so horrible. And the reader is going, oh my God, that's so horrible. Why would you write about it?
Yeah.
And you're like, that's the wrong response.
Right.
Because we actually saw that with Amato's proposal. When people read that, they were like, what the hell is wrong with you? Why would you write about eating the Irish babies? and it's like, no. You don't get it. He's talking about how the English are using the Irish. And your outrage is totally justified, but you're pointing it in the wrong direction. And it keeps happening. Every time that satire is brought up, when it first comes out, people react like that. They knee jerk. And it's like, wait, take a breath, think about it.
Yeah. Oh yeah, we see that all the time today with comedy and satire. And one of the things that people like the ones you just described, what they don't understand is that just because something is the subject of the joke doesn't mean it's the target of the joke. Joe Rogan talked about this a while back. He had a comedian on his show, but he said, he was talking about how if you're a white comedian and you get up on stage and just mentioning, oh yeah, so this Black guy and his white girlfriend are hanging out one day, people automatically in the audience get tense, like, oh, a mixed race couple, oh, and it's coming from a white guy, uh-oh. And it's like, hold on, listen to the joke first, where it's like just touching the subject of race, if you're white, is enough for people to get on edge. But it's ridiculous, though. It's getting to a point where it's not even bad, where like, of course, it's in their minds it's bad to make fun of something, but just bringing it up, if you're not of the right identity, that's enough to get you in trouble.
Yeah. Well, and a lot of people, it's because that whole idea of punching up or punching down in comedy, that's a relatively new concept that's come out of this culture of censorship, where they say, and the first time I saw an infographic on it, I was like, this is the dumbest example I've ever seen. The comedian says, the only way I can get sex is if I date rape. And a woman in the audience is like, my date rape was the worst experience of my life. And I'm sure it was. Yeah. But that's a bad example. He is not punching down. He is punching at himself.
Right.
He's saying he's so pathetic that he's basically a criminal. And it's like, that's not a joke about rape victims.
Yeah.
Just bringing up the subject is not enough to say it's offensive.
Right.
And ever since then, I've been like on the lookout for this bullshit. Because I was like, that is just the worst example you could have possibly come up with. I have seen punching down that I thought was offensive, which I'm just like, not going to watch it, okay? That's my response. And tell people, I didn't like it because of this reason, not saying, you can't like it, and I want that guy to never perform again. No, that's not the appropriate response.
Yeah. Well, it reminds me of another comedian, same thing, where his joke could actually be seen as a very progressive, being very sympathetic to progressive ideas, but he got criticized for it. I can't remember the name of the comedian. I should have prepared more for this. But the joke, he was on Joe Rogan talking about this. But the joke was something like, now I know that being gay isn't a choice. Now I know that being gay is something that you're born with, because there's such a thing as gay black men. Black men don't wake up saying, "Oh, I wish my life were harder." And so the comedian, he said that he got in trouble. He was out of college, and he told that joke, and then they pulled him aside, and then he couldn't perform the rest of the show. And he goes, "I'm sympathizing with gay black people. I'm saying, yeah, it's probably difficult being black. It's probably more difficult being black and gay. Like, I'm sympathizing with them."
That is literally the intersectionality like hierarchy thing. Yeah. He's actually saying that, yeah, they do have it worse. Oh my God. That's the problem, is that a lot of this comes down to a lack of intelligence or laziness of thought. Pick your poison, essentially, is that either this person is too dumb to understand what's going on, because I'm sorry, humor especially is clever, it's intelligent. It has to be. That's what humor comes from, is from intelligence. Or they're too lazy to think about it. And lazy thinking is probably, to my mind, worse.
I think so too, and I think social media has had a big part in that, where it's like, the best way, some threads go viral, but like the ones that the tweets that usually go the most viral are the outrage. It's the profanity laden, angry opinion about something, and it's like, yeah, I feel the same way too. It's like, but very few people go, oh, I don't know about this, I'm on the fence about that, or I can pick that apart a little bit. It's made lazy thinking a lot faster.
It has, because it's so easy to hit that send button. It's just so easy to type that out and hit send, and then wait for the likes and the retweets. It's so pleasing. And to me, I'm sort of like, maybe it's a good thing I'm off Twitter. I don't know. It could be. I mean, is it burning your brain out to be on Twitter all the time? I was on Twitter all the time, like all day long. And the problem is that why I say it's not okay that they ban me, that they ban anyone, is that I don't think we should give up the Twitter space. I don't. That's essentially, every social media platform is a battleground at this point. And we cannot give them up. Just because it seems like we're losing, especially when news organizations or companies go, look at Twitter. Twitter says this, so we're going to do it. Well, we have to make sure that we're also on Twitter to tell them, no, we don't want you to do that. Don't fire that person. Don't cancel this project. It's still a place to speak out. Yes.
And it also makes it a lot easier to see, the crazy ideologues. So in some ways, as frustrating as being on Twitter can be, it also makes it a lot easier to see. I don't want to call them enemies, but at least, people who are enemies to free thought. It makes it a lot easier to see them. It makes it a lot easier to know exactly what it is that I'm fighting against, and it makes it easier to see who I'm fighting for. I've definitely met a lot of really cool people on Twitter. So I think that we're starting to see more communities build around going out that are against a lot of this ridiculous woke bullshit.
And that is definitely something people need to do. They need to speak out. In any form that they can, even if they're anonymous, even if they're not willing to put their face or their name on it, I still think their voice will matter. We've seen Anonymous writing throughout history has made huge changes. As I said, Jonathan Swift never published under his own name.
Right.
So it's like, you have to remember that that doesn't make your point less valid. And I definitely think that everyone who watches this, who watches an unsafe space or anything like this, should speak out as often as they can, wherever they can.
Right.
Even that means writing a letter to your city council.
Yes.
It's definitely something that needs to be done.
And it's something that I encourage artists and creators to do. Like, stick up for each other, even if you disagree with the person, even if you're very progressive and the person who got canceled voted for Trump, stick up for them, because they'll come after you too. It doesn't matter who you voted for. Like, you can claim to be on the right side of history. You can claim to be an ally to all marginalized groups, but all you're doing is like, the way I see it is that, when I see prominent figures go out of their way to claim to be an ally for this movement or for that group, the way social justice works nowadays is that it's really more akin to making a deal with the mafia, where it's like, yeah, we'll give you this protection, but you have to stay in line. You got to make sure that you pay your dues and this and that. It's like, that's not a partnership you want to be part of. You want to be with people who are going to have your back no matter what. Even if you disagree with them, you're completely different from them politically. If they go after the person who said something wrong, especially nowadays with the thing that's considered wrong keeps changing, it keeps shifting, it keeps growing, they'll come after you too. So it's better to have like this network of people who you might disagree with on certain things, but build that network. Start making connections with people, and there's so much common ground where it's like, at the end of the day, we all just want the same freedom to be able to express ourselves and try new things, and to fail and to still get that second chance to try again. We all want that for ourselves, and we want it for each other. So yeah, whatever creative medium you're working in, go out and fight for everyone who's creating.
Yeah, anyone. And don't let anyone be silenced. Right. I know I feel like this is probably the most important part of all of this, is that it doesn't matter who's trying to do the silencing. Yeah. If it's the government, if it's intergovernment, if it's corporate industry, an influencer, a journalist, the mob. Yeah. Social media industries trying to take you down, or even yourself.
Right.
Don't let censorship silence you, and don't let it silence others either. Most important thing. Right.
Even if it's coming from your own side, even if it's coming from people that you like and you agree with, I definitely encourage people to be civil about it. Don't make enemies if you don't need to. But even though it is fun though, but at the same time, not too long ago, somebody posted something on Twitter. They said something like, yeah, I understand the nuance of criticizing your own side, but at the same time, you're also giving more ammunition to the opposing side. It's like, yeah, to an extent, but I think also the more you dig your heels in for a side that's in favor of ideas that you're strongly against, but you're going along with it, that also gives ammunition to the other side. When you want to say, hey, look, guys, I agree with you on a lot of things, but we can't do this. That actually makes you look better to the opposing side. That makes them, that they're more likely to be like, oh, maybe there are some good people on the other side. Maybe they're worth talking to.
Well, that's integrity. If you have integrity, almost everyone who also has integrity is willing to recognize that.
Right.
And that's the important thing in all this. And to me, the integrity is don't silence anyone.
Right.
That's the thing to stand on for any reason and in any way. So do you have any final thoughts for this?
Yeah, I just want to end on a little more advice for aspiring creators. Try to make bravery a habit, even if you don't have a large audience. Be willing to stick to your guns. Be willing to not apologize, to not explain simply because a handful of people are offended, because it'll make it a lot easier for other people to stick by your side. It'll make it a lot easier for other artists to not give in to the mob. Start setting that precedent, no matter how big or small your audience is. Start setting that precedent of like, look, if you don't like my work, that's fine. Don't support me. Go support someone else. But yeah, just start, no matter how small the act is, start trying to make bravery an important part of your own craft. So yeah, I think that's
really good. Yes. All right, so I'm going to wrap this up. This was really awesome. Thank you so much, Joe, for joining me for this. This was 451 Degrees, the new censorship podcast on the Unsafe Space Network. Thank you so much for joining us. Thank you for joining us, Joe. And if you guys could please walk your fingers over to the subscribe and like button, we would really appreciate it. And if you wanted to comment on any possible censorship you've experienced in your own life or that you've seen recently, please leave a comment below and we might talk about it next time. Thank you.
Bye, everyone.
Thanks for watching. If you're new to the channel, we have a deep content library that includes interviews with everyone from Mike Cernovich to Megan Murphy, so go check it out. If you'd like to see more, please consider supporting the show by visiting unsafespace.com/donate. You can find us on all the major social media platforms, well, mostly. And you can find a community of like-minded individuals on our Unsafe Space chat on Telegram. See you there.
Warning. This is an unsafe space. Dangerous ideas have been detected. The content of this production has not been authorized by the Cathedral. Pay no attention to its thinky talk. The following co-conspirators have been unpersoned and will be recycled as part of our sustainability program. Here's a fun fact, there is literally no downside to unreserved obedience. We are not violent, but I would like to remind you that we have nukes and F-15s. If you think about it, no one should be allowed to express opinions. But don't. Think about it, I mean. That's not your job. Thinking has been scientifically proven to be less efficient than compliance. Science, scientific, and scientifically are registered trademarks of the World Economic Forum. Unauthorized use is prohibited. Computer voice courtesy. Never mind, that last line is fake news. Please disregard it and return to your safe space immediately. There will be cake.